The cell measured 3 meters by 4, which James Reiker knew because he'd paced it approximately 8,000 times. The walls were some kind of composite that didn't scratch, so he'd taken to marking time on the underside of his bunk where the guards wouldn't notice. 247 days since the ambush. 247 days of protein paste and recycled air and the low hum of the warship's engines. Then they brought in the Queen. She didn't look like the propaganda posters. No ceremonial armor or crown of starlight. Just a woman with impossibly long ears and eyes the color of winter storms, wearing the same gray prisoner uniform they'd given him. They shoved her into the adjacent cell and activated the force field between them with a snap that made his teeth ache. For 3 days, neither of them spoke. She sat with perfect posture, staring at nothing. He continued his exercises, counting push-ups to maintain sanity. On the 4th day, she said, "You're human. Last time I checked." James finished his sit-ups. "You're Queen Melissa, the one we were supposedly rescuing." How ironic. Her voice carried layers of bitterness. Rescued into the same cage. A guard passing by laughed. The mighty Queen of Talzera, sharing quarters with primitives, how the stars have fallen. James stood before thinking. She's still got better manners than you. The guard's hand went to his weapon, but his companion pulled him away. Not worth the paperwork. After they left, Melissa studied him with new interest. That was foolish. I've had 8 months to perfect foolish. 8 months. She seemed to calculate something. The Battle of Kepler's Gate. The ambush at Kepler's Gate, James corrected. Your people knew we were coming. Not my people, not anymore. She moved to the barrier, and up close he could see the exhaustion in her face. Lieutenant, it is Lieutenant. James is fine. Rank doesn't mean much here. James, then. She touched the force field, and it rippled. How would you like to leave? He laughed, couldn't help it. Sure, right after I finish redecorating. I'm serious. Her winter storm eyes locked onto his, but it requires an arrangement you won't like. The plan was absolutely insane, which meant it was also their only option. James listened to Melissa explain Kael'thar politics like she was describing a particularly complicated board game. Factions within factions, ancient laws that superseded military authority, loopholes written in centuries-old treaties. Marriage, he said flatly. You want me to marry someone I've never met. My daughter, Princess Syla, currently hiding on Sanctuary Station. Melissa's tone was matter-of-fact, like discussing cargo manifests. A binding alliance with an outsider triggers the right of formal challenge. They'd have to release us for proper proceedings. After that, we disappear. And your daughter just goes along with this? Something flickered in Melissa's expression. She's a princess. She understands duty. James paced his 3x4-meter cage. What if they ignore your ancient laws? What if this is elaborate revenge for defending you against a guard? Then we're still prisoners and we've lost nothing. Melissa's practicality was almost admirable. But the Kael'thar are traditional. Law matters to them more than warfare. It's why they'll lose eventually. They can't adapt. Over the following days, she taught him everything. The forehead touch was formal greeting. Crossed arms meant respect, not defiance. Their language had 17 words for honor and 3 for love. They value duty above emotion, she explained. Remember that during the ceremony. This is insane, James said for the 10th time. Do you have a better option? He didn't. That was the problem. When he finally agreed, Melissa actually smiled. First time he'd seen it. Thank you, Lieutenant. When I reclaim my throne, you'll be rewarded. I'll settle for not being in a cell. She began the formal declaration the next morning, voice carrying through the ship. Guards came running. The captain arrived, furious. But Melissa recited law codes in High Kael'thar, and James watched the captain's expression shift from anger to trapped frustration. This changes nothing, the captain said. It changes everything, Melissa replied. Unless you'd like to explain to the council why you violated the right. They were transferred within hours. James caught Melissa's eye as guards escorted them to the shuttle. She nodded once, satisfied. He hoped he hadn't just traded one cage for another. Sanctuary Station smelled like 15 different species trying to coexist. James followed Melissa through corridors where humans walked alongside Kael'thar, Ventrators, and things he didn't have names for. She moved with purpose, no longer the resigned prisoner, but something closer to the Queen from propaganda posters. Princess Syla was waiting in a cafe that served liquids in colors James didn't trust. She stood when they entered, and James's first thought was that she looked tired. Young, maybe 25 in human years, with her mother's elegant ears but softer features. Her eyes were amber where Melissa's were storm gray. Mother. Syla's greeting was formal, proper. Daughter. Melissa wasted no time. This is Lieutenant James Reiker. You're marrying him, today. Syla didn't flinch. I understand. James found his voice. You don't have to, this wasn't your choice. Choice is a luxury, Lieutenant. Syla's tone was gentle but firm. I've been engaged 4 times for political advantage. At least this one comes with freedom attached. The resignation in her voice made something twist in James's chest. This wasn't right. But Melissa was already moving, already planning, and they were swept into a whirlwind of paperwork and bureaucratic formality. The ceremony took 11 minutes. A board sanctuary official rattled through the legal requirements in 3 languages. James and Syla touched foreheads as required. Her skin was warm. Her hand, when they completed the traditional clasp, trembled slightly. Congratulations, the official said without enthusiasm. Next, Melissa left immediately, reunions to attend, loyalists to gather. James and Syla stood in the hallway outside the office, legally bound, practically strangers. Separate quarters, Syla said quietly. For appearances. The marriage needs to seem real, but I'm not going to, James stopped, frustrated. This whole thing is wrong. Wrong? She almost smiled. Welcome to Kael'thar politics, husband. That night, James found her on an observation deck, staring at the stars like they held answers. I'm sorry, he said. She turned, surprised. For what? For being part of this, for trapping you. Syla studied him for a long moment. You gave us freedom, Lieutenant. That's more than most people in my position receive. My mother's plans, her wars, her throne, I've been currency for all of it since birth. She looked back at the stars. At least you're honest about what this is. James stood beside her, following her gaze. What do you see out there? Possibilities, Syla said softly. Every star is somewhere I'll never go. My mother will reclaim her throne, and I'll resume being the dutiful princess. She glanced at him. What do you see? Home, maybe, eventually. He paused. Or something new. Haven't decided yet. They stood in comfortable silence, watching distant suns, 2 prisoners trying to figure out what freedom actually meant. 3 weeks of travel, and James learned that Princess Syla collected music the way some people collected scars. She had recordings from 47 worlds, each one carefully catalogued. She played them in the evenings, haunting melodies that made him homesick for places he'd never been. This one's from Ven Prime, she said, adjusting the player. They compose in mathematical sequences. It sounds like organized chaos. Exactly. She smiled, and James realized he'd started measuring time by those smiles instead of days. They fell into routines. Mornings, Melissa held strategy sessions with her loyalists, plans growing increasingly militant. Afternoons, James and Syla explored whatever station or port they docked at. Evenings, music and conversation that ranged from trivial to profound. What do you call a Kael'thar without long ears? James asked one night. Syla groaned preemptively. Please don't. Short-changed. She threw a cushion at him, laughing despite herself. That's terrible, genuinely terrible. I have worse ones. I believe you. But the laughter faded when Melissa's plans became impossible to ignore. She was gathering weapons, calling in debts, preparing for conquest disguised as reclamation. James saw Syla withdraw, saw her become smaller at her mother's war councils. She's going to start another war, Syla whispered one evening, just the 2 of them. I know. People will die, thousands, maybe millions. Can you stop her? Syla's laugh was bitter. I'm her daughter, her property. She'd sacrifice me for strategic advantage without hesitation. James took her hand, the first time he'd initiated contact since the ceremony. You're also my wife, legally bound to me. Doesn't that give you some protection? Technically, I suppose. Then I'm ordering you to make your own choice. She stared at him, amber eyes wide. You can't. Watch me. They confronted Melissa together the next morning. James expected fury, expected threats. What he got was cold calculation. You want me to negotiate, Melissa said. To be diplomatic with those who deposed me, who killed my advisors, who would have executed Syla if she hadn't escaped. I want you to stop creating more victims, Syla said, voice steady despite her trembling hands. I want peace, Mother, not revenge. Peace is weakness. Peace is strength. James stepped forward. Your daughter has more courage than your entire war council. She's choosing a harder path. Melissa looked between them, seeing the united front. Finally, she nodded. Very well, diplomacy first. But if it fails, then we'll discuss alternatives, Syla said, together. Later, on the observation deck that had become their place, James and Syla watched stars drift past. The annulment, Syla said quietly. We agreed this was temporary. We did. We could still process it. You'd be free, really free. James turned to face her. What if I don't want that particular freedom? James, what if two people who were forced together decided to actually choose each other? Would that be insane? Syla's smile was tremulous. Completely insane. Good, he took her hand properly, fingers intertwining. I've had enough of sensible. She leaned against him, and they stood together watching infinite possibilities drift past like stars. Freedom, they were learning, wasn't about escaping cages. It was about choosing who you shared the view with.